So welcome everybody to this latest episode of the Build and Thrive podcast with me, your host, Stuart Mace. I'll introduce my guest just very, very shortly, but a word to our sponsors, to GKR Scaffolding, for helping us make this happen. So today we're recording on a Friday afternoon of all days, and it's nice and sunny outside, and there's a bit of a dressed down look from myself. But my guest, Keith Prince, isn't. He is dressed in his nice press shirt. So Keith, I'd like to start off with a mastermind approach. So we'll go with this to see how this goes. So I don't know the answers to all of these questions. Clearly, I know the answer to number 2. But please, can you tell me what your full name is?
Keith Prince.
No middle
name. No.
No confirmation. No, nothing's. That's not my wife. Just first and second name.
I was going to say I was almost called Dennis because my dad's an average Man United fan after Dennis Law, but yeah, my mum wouldn't have it. So yeah, Keith Prince.
She was probably right. Moving on. What's your current occupation?
So I'm the head of health, safety and wellbeing for Sizewell C Site Delivery.
Excellent. And we'll probably get into that as we go through the podcast. And if you were on Mastermind, what will your chosen specialised subjects be?
I'm going to say Harry Potter, films and books.
Interesting. Okay. So which would you prefer, the books or the films?
I'm going to say actually like both, but again, maybe of a certain age, I was able to read them as they came up the ramp, as it were. So obviously we were reading them when we didn't quite know what was going to happen. And I don't think J.K. Rowling did either. So then you read the book and got to watch the film. So it was almost it was a good period, I suppose, to do that. Whereas today, obviously, the films are fairly widespread.
Yeah. Favourite character?
Oh, it's going to be. I'm going to say Hermione. And
obviously, I've got to ask why.
I think it's just, and I don't want to be overly, crass, scripted, whatever the word is, but, in terms of the modern construction industry, the diversity we're starting to see through what we do is a sea change, I think, in the industry. And as one of the strongest characters in Harry Potter, I think, she did a hell of a lot in terms of, giving young women, girls, that kind of platform for somebody who actually, is seen as a key character, a key ally, for Harry and someone who's obviously a key part of the whole story. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I wasn't expecting that. To be fair, I don't know what I was expecting from you, but I wasn't expecting that. Are you an avid fan of sort of franchisee films or things like that, or was it just because you got into the books and it's gone from there?
I suppose Avengers. I watched all of those in time order. I think was that around the time of COVID. I think so. Yeah. Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. Yeah, I think I'm just your probably typical middle-aged guy in the UK. I don't know.
Yeah. I was asked a couple of weeks ago by who was it now? A nephew's girlfriend's mother. What's your top 10 films? And couldn't do it. Couldn't come up with nail it down to 10. It was 20. But yeah, it was interesting one. Yeah, but in terms of the character there, as you sort of referenced Hermione in the Harry Potter books, going to sort of, I guess, slowly segue that into yourself with regards to when you're reflecting your career so far. What moments have impacted you the most?
I think I'd have to say Terminal 5, and I know others would probably share that view in terms of. At the time, I was 27. It was my original trade was a civil engineer. I suppose once a civil engineer, always a C-Eng. But at that point in my career, I was one of the youngest kind of project engineers of the time. I did all of the earthworks for the whole of Terminal 5 and kind of handed that over for people to start to build the structures. So I was there right at the start, which was a great phase of the project. But it was the first time, I think, where we started to explore some of the concepts that we have today. Some of the enterprise models, alliancing models, different ways of managing risk, more intelligent clients. It was around the time of the Egan report and M4I, so it was, things were starting to change from being, just about following the rules and the regulations into behavioural safety. So there was quite a lot of kind of concepts coming through in terms of what construction might start to look like. And obviously at the end of Terminal 5, people still look back at it, and even on Sizewell C right now, people refer to it as a almost akin to that kind of project where, if you think about a nuclear reactor site, it's very condensed, very congested, everyone all in one place, but with so many different levels and different complexities going on that almost how do you manage and coordinate work in that kind of environment? And you're probably going to want a highly collaborative enterprise, kind of inclusive approach to how you go about it. So yeah. And obviously people who've grown up in the industry, like myself, there are many others, brought that experience with them and end up, at the stage of the career they're at right now on a project like I'm on.
Yeah. And you mentioned Sizewell C there, and I am going to ask you, and I purposely don't do this at the beginning with regards to introducing a guest, because I think it's better in their own words. So, that was back in your early days. And similarly, when I started my career, things that you learn on, dare I say, your first meaningful job, should we say, that you take throughout your career. So how has your career sort of panned out and developed, and what do you do, at Sizewell C? So I'm conscious there are two questions there.
I know, of course, your journey, you never lay it out in front of you. You asked me where I was going to be in the early 90s when I was doing my civil engineering degree in Aston in Birmingham. I just thought I was going to join the old Lang business. And, at the time they were building the second Severn Crossing and Cardiff Arms Park, as I call it. It's called Principality now, I think, isn't it?
It's changed so many times, hasn't it?
Just ahead of the World Cup in Wales in '99. I was an engineer through and through. After the end of Terminal 5, I became a project leader for a time, delivered a few projects, which again, was a great part of my career. I just naturally started to find a vocation in health and safety, I suppose. And what was important, and maybe what created that change, was my engineering background. So in terms of seeing health and safety through the lens of an engineer, of course, engineered solutions, practical solutions, and working together to create solutions to problems was something that I suppose I was naturally good at through my engineering career, but then started to apply it to health and safety. And obviously with the, I used to say once my career kind of tracked CDM. So I joined the industry in '94. Obviously when CDM was released, and then went through the various iterations of it and applied it, I suppose, as an engineer and then as a health and safety professional and practitioner. I suppose what I base my career on today is that kind of people focus. It's the fact that at a time when I grew up as an engineer in the 90s, health and safety was about rules and regulations, and I don't want to be detrimental to the profession, but there was a lot of kind of clipboard warriors who would arguably be barriers to work. The police, we can't play conkers because you haven't got your glasses on kind of image and culture of health and safety. Whereas I always saw myself very much as an enabler, somebody who can help. For those who like Celebrity Get Me Out of Here, what resonated with me once on one episode, sorry to digress, was you'll remember a scene in the very first episode when they're stood on top of almost like a rotunda building, a circular building in the middle of Cairns or wherever it is, and there's a plank that the celebrities have to walk out on and collect a glass of water or something from the end of it, and often the plank collapses or something, and they end up falling and screaming, to that effect. But what I liked, I've been trying to snip up the clip. What Anton Deck said is, don't worry, we've had our health and safety people look at this, and they've allowed us to do this, they've enabled us to do this. Yeah. And that's what I think, I like the professions we thought about, is that we're kind of risk masters, risk Jedis, and we can help people do work that is sometimes high risk, but we can do it and give that comfort blanket and that assurance and that confidence that it's okay to do that task in the way we're proposing to do it. So that's where I suppose to turn full circle then to end that line to where I am at Sizewell C now is we're very much trying to be a a project that's not just pushing boundaries, not big, maybe we'll come back to that, but big on pushing boundaries and big on creating resilience, creating maturity, embedding the ways we go to work, making sure that we're doing the best job collectively, not just chasing the next dream, I suppose. So, but yeah, engineered solutions, really good engineered solutions around health, really good engineered solutions around safety. It's all part of the future.
Yeah. All right. Can I steal that phrase, risk Jedi? Please?
If you want it.
Have you got trademark on that? Because I like that. And you and I have had a couple of conversations when it comes to looking at risk from a psychosocial point of view. I might look to you to use that.
It's a lot better than clipboard warrior.
Clipboard warrior. I'm not sure I like that one as much. But your analogy there of the plank and the plank of wood, there is there was a couple of years ago on socials, I guess, or whatever, which platform people are on. There was a picture of someone doing that, and this is what health and safety looked like in 1970 versus what it looks like today. And the point you make there, and I think it's a valid point to sort of just reiterate, because when I speak to friends and family, they ask what I do on construction and industry, health and safety, they stop you from doing stuff. And it's not about that. It's actually, we want things to happen, but we just want them to happen safely and making sure we're not harming people, simple as that. And sometimes the way to stop a risk is to stop the stimulus, realistically. I mean, if you don't want something to happen, you stop it at source, which in a sense you could look at, that's what risk mitigation is. But we've still got to progress and evolve and do things. So it's actually like you. I hope I see it through those eyes of we're doing it, but we're doing it safely. We're not actually going to have an adverse effect from it.
I think it's a case of not being afraid of risk either. It's just working. It's just working with it. It exists.
Yeah.
I know the purists would say we should eliminate everything. If we tried to do that, yes, we probably could, but we'd be even more expensive as a nation when it comes to construction than we are at the moment. So there's a proportionality in there, and that's what's great about our legal framework. Reasonably practical is probably the best phrase ever invented in this space. And I know something that other countries around the world envy, our approach. I don't support a more prescriptive way of managing risk. I remember back in the day where a trench over 1.2 metres needed to be shored. And it was actually great when we moved to a place of, it's a risk-based solution, because obviously that 1.2 metres could be solid rock, whereas a trench of 500 mil could be, the reg might not say you needed to shore it, but of course you do, because there's a risk there. So I love proportionality. I love a LARP. I think it just needs to be applied in the right way and not applied in too overzealous manner. And I think you need practitioners who are comfortable with risk, who can help create solutions that are pragmatic and practical and practicable, so that we can actually get on and build things without being overly kind of nervous about, are we doing the right thing or not?
Yeah. And again, I just want to sort of move on from that in a way that, I noticed in your background that it's of late, and I say of late in the last 2-3 years, that the well-being piece has been dropped into your title in whatever guise it is, and it's like, how does that sort of now start to play out? How are you seeing that in traditional health and safety? How has it affected? Is your job any different? By that aspect of your that word being dropped into your title. Not a loaded question. Not looking to catch you out. Just trying to. We deal with a lot of health, safety, and well-being, and the well-being is a bolt on. Let's put it that way, without being frank. And there's some organisations that put it in there to be those clipboard warriors, dare I say it. It's an add-on, but I don't get the feeling that's how you're seeing it. And it'd be interesting to see how you've sort of, through your experience, embraced that well-being piece onto the health and safety piece.
The soundbite to bookend this, almost start of the answer and maybe work back. The soundbite for me for this is, if you don't grasp the fact that by doing good well-being, you're going to get better safety, you're kind of, for me, not in the right place yet. I think in the past, yes, we did safety, and we might have done a bit of health. We might have done a bit of well-being, but I think the fundamental shift that's happened, and this is linked to many simulations. I think, in terms of, is it sports science? Is it common sense? I don't know. Is it the shift in society? But I think we all recognise now the fact that unless you're prepared to perform, unless you're prepared for an exam with a good night's sleep the night before, unless you eat well, unless you're fit, unless all of those things are true, then you're not going to perform. So I think it's becoming more and more accepted doctrine, or whatever you want to call it now, that if someone has an accident, there's likely some condition that's created that. I remember a high potential event we had when I was at Langeroog, and it was a slinger signaller who made a mistake when slinging a load at 11 o'clock on a Monday morning. When you actually looked into his commute that day, he'd flown from Ireland to get to London, to then end up on the back of a lorry slinging a load, and then of course mistakes happen. And I think we all recognise, we could do a test right now. If I asked you to spell a word backwards or whatever, you've all been part of those. Yeah. When we're under pressure, when we're tired, when we haven't slept, when we're being triggered by the next email or the next ping or the next vibration on your phone, we make mistakes. We're human, we err. So ultimately, you have to look at how do you put people in an environment where they're going to feel cared for, feel respected, they're going to be well, they're going to be able to sleep, well nourished, be respected, even from the shirt on their back to the sandwich you're serving them in the canteen. Unless you do all of those things, then you're not managing risk on site in terms of safety. And so I think, it's gone from being a bolt-on to really being the lens we should look at health and safety through. Because unless people are ready, unless your team are fit to go onto that pitch, then they're going to underperform. And that's where I see it. And if I may just expand along where that journey came from. So yes, I was in that world where it may resonate with some people that you used to get more points for having a menu of a certain kind on the Considerate Constructor scheme. You used to get more points for having a female toilet. You used to get more points for having a bike rack, and they're all well serving, those things, and maybe they were the things that needed to happen in order to get us to where we are today, but. We shouldn't be doing those things to get some points for an audit. We should be doing them because they're the right thing to do for our people. Yeah. So that's where my journey started, really. It was then to start to see how, of course, we've always had this mission to make sure that health is shouted just as loudly as safety. And I've done a lot of work with the HCLG, the Health Construction Leadership Group. Great video, which is actually still relevant, I think, which... Again, will we ever really shout health louder than safety, considering the stats in terms of fatalities that result from those two different risks? But then obviously there's the mental health factor as well, and how people feel about that, and the high level of suicide within the industry. I think when you look at all of those things together, it makes more sense as well that if people feel healthier, they feel better mentally, they feel better physically, then you're going to get just better outcomes generally, whether that's more efficient construction or better health and safety. Yeah,
I do want to delve into that maybe a little bit within Sizewell, but how, and again, this is your professional opinion, how are you seeing it from outside of Sizewell as a industry as a whole, that aspect? Because just to put my 2 pennies worth in, my viewpoint is that if you have happier chickens, you're going to get more eggs.
That's a great phrase. Can I steal that one?
You're more than happy to have it. It's not mine, but you can have that. But it's to me, that's just common sense. Now, yes, there's research behind that, and some people will push against it, etc., etc. But I'm generally finding, and this isn't to put words into your mouth, but I'm generally interested how you see it over the industry. But what I'm seeing is the drivers for doing this, let's say something like ISO 45003, which for those who are not aware is the bolt-ons of 45001, which is psychosocial risk assessment, is because they're coming up in bids. They won't win business unless they're working towards these principles. Great for us because that's our niche, but it's kind of the drivers are financial and business impact as opposed to the right thing to do, or actually you should be doing this anyway from a mitigation point of view and health and safety at work law 101. how do you? I mean, I've sort of set my stall out there in a very pessimistic and negative way. It's not all like that, but I suppose just to draw you into that conversation, are you with me on that, or are you seeing in others in industry, not necessarily yourself, granted, going along the path for the right reasons as opposed to we need to win money or we need to tick a box to satisfy HSE?
It's a really interesting question, and there's a number of things that immediately spring into my mind around. I think you have to start with the fact that businesses have to be profitable in order to exist, and businesses out there, we could stand on the high moral ground and say you should be doing this anyway. But as soon as you start to invest in things, all the aspects of 45,003, even for some companies, all the aspects of 45,001, it means an investment, and that's coming out of their bottom line. And I'm not going to get my little violin out and talk about, the low margins of tier ones. We all know the history with Carillion, etc. And the construction industry is, it's a dynamic environment where, contractors can make a lot of money, but they can also lose a lot of money, and we know that. So every investment of this nature to what we might call move the bar or move the line is an investment that they're hoping for some outcome from. There has to be some kind of cost benefit to every investment. One analogy, maybe, I don't know if it's a good one or not, but when I was at Langer O'Rourke, I was there for a number of years. Ray O'Rourke, massive visionary and such a change agent for the industry around modular, precast and all those things. And we may all, on a call like this, agree that that's a great way to move forward. Why shouldn't we build more in factory conditions? Why shouldn't we standardise more designs and make buildings even dismantleable for carbon footprint reasons and all those things? But right now it's still more expensive. And I could use the analogies around solar panels or flat screen TVs. They were expensive ones. I couldn't afford one, but now I can because everybody's doing it. And so you almost need that you need to be at the forefront of these changes in industry. But and that's where businesses want to be. They want to be at the forefront, but they can't go all in until it becomes a norm that clients are willing to pay for and clients are willing to fund. With the backdrop as well of the low productivity in the industry, and they want to attract people and all those things as well, and they want to win, and they need to win work or go bust. So that's my sympathy with the problem. The other part of it for me though is, look, I think you need the 45,003s of the world. I think you need clients to start to demand them, and you may feel like contractors are only doing it because they're having to. But that's one way of moving the dial. You need using your chickens. You need your chicken. You need your chicken and eggs. I'm getting lost now. You need your carrot and stick, is what I was trying to say. In terms of you need some motivation to do it. You can't just base your business on a moral argument, because otherwise you're going to go out of business. And we could all, So I think there's, and having been in amongst the T1 community for a while, there is always that balance in boardrooms. Of course, we want to invest more. Of course, we want to look after our people. But how can we afford that? And how do we move that forward? And what's our 3-year plan or 5-year plan? But you can get there, providing you've got the right leadership and the right direction. So
yeah, you're absolutely right, because you can get there, and it's not actually that expensive. No. People may try and shoot me down with that, but it's not.
There is the cost benefit as well, as in the investment in people. For example, we all know right now, I think, how hard it is to retain people, attract people, bring people into the industry. I've gone on record a number of times about wanting to move the industry. If I had any legacy, it would be to move the industry from being a Portaloo, dirty, noisy, vibration, sexist, misogynistic, whatever, racist industry.
You're painting a lovely picture here. Why would you ever want to work in this industry? You want to move it
from the wolf whistly, clipboard warrior industry that maybe I started in to one that is progressive, digital, modern, inclusive, diverse, exciting, innovative, all of those things is where we want to get it to. And everything we're saying, investment in that will attract people, will retain people. And ultimately one day, maybe the only businesses that survive will be the ones with the best people.
Yeah, and I'm going to come to ask you about what you're doing differently at Sizewell C, probably around that sector, but around that piece. But I'll make you right. And this is the point I make to clients is, we've got to now think of future generations, and the legacy of the industry here. This isn't going to stop. We're still going to build and what have you. But the phrase, and I've probably said this to you a few times, or you've heard me say it before, is the best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So what's your legacy going to now's the time to do it, because if you don't, you will be left behind. And we are. I'm starting to see some organizations making redundancies because they're still doing what they were doing 20 years ago and think it's going to work in 2026. And health, safety and wellbeing 2026 is different to what I would suggest it was even pre-pandemic. So, there has been a shift. But again, the piece I mentioned to organisations is how to make scaffolding sexy. That's what you've got. And there are some real positives to working outside and with your mates and actually being physically active in your job. Some people would give the phrase, we give the right arm for that. But other people look at it and go, why would I want to work outside in the cold? It's awful, blah, 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 and it's boring. And so, it's how do it's through that lens. How do you. So in terms of, as I said earlier, what you guys are doing, what would you suggest, or what do you feel Sizewell C are doing differently? It's an opportunity for you to really sort of demonstrate what you've done well, what's worked, and all that good stuff that I know that you do.
So what's the vision? So maybe to answer this, you have to understand in a way the different dynamics around a Sizewell C, and also what's most important is its location as well, which were all factors. So look, we're not looking at health, safety, wellbeing in isolation. It's all about its interconnection. And I think that's an important point to make, that, any business looking to progress, this isn't just about health and safety. I think we'll all recognise the fact that, like you've said, happy chickens will have more eggs. But that comes back to you need to be profitable, responsible, add social value, respect people, respect the community. All of those things add up. We all know that a good project is one that, you never get a project that's profitable and had really bad health and safety, or really good health and safety and poor quality. So there is kind of an and conversation in all of this about, look, it's just about operational efficiency and having whatever the policies and standards in place that really promote your overall culture and what you're trying to achieve. And almost you should really get good health, safety, wellbeing as a byproduct of that. It's all part of that machine. But no, in terms of what we're doing specifically, and linking back to what I've just said, look, we're in Suffolk, and it's the first time I've really been there, properly, since I've been working on the project last 18 months. And it is, it's one of the most, I'm going to say, remote parts of the country. It feels that way. I mean,
it is.
It's not like, I don't know, Inverness or the Outer Hebrides or something, but, you can still be in London within, 2 hours. But still, you feel remote, certainly away from that London draw of work, or any other kind of popular city or town or whatever. So we're going to have to attract people, is the point. We're going to have to attract people. We need at least 8,000 people to come to Suffolk to help us build this thing. And that's not including all the staff in all the different off-site offices as well. So there's an attraction piece there. There's a respect for the local community piece, so we want to make sure that all of our guys and girls and everything else who come to the project are kind of connected to the project, but also in a level, I think, more than any major project before, is to respect the community. So without listing everything, if you think about all of those things together, retaining, attracting, the local connection, all of those things, we need a health, safety, wellbeing model that is people-centric at its heart. And that means a number of things. That means, first of all, to attract people, we're going to need good facilities. We need people to talk about Sizewell, I don't know, down the pub at the weekend saying, I'm on this new project called Sizewell. It's really good. They look after you. There's a great welfare facilities. I get a really good locker and drying room. The PPE's great. It's really good. I've never had such a good standard or whatever. The canteen is great. It's a bit like Centre Parks. It's kind of moved on. We're even going to have things like an amphitheatre in the campus. We're going to have a gym with Pilates classes. So it's kind of taken it to a level where the more we invest, and we know the more we invest in the services that bring people to the project, the services that make them feel cared for while they're on the project, all of those things will not only attract them, but going back to what we said before, happy chickens make better eggs. When they go out, go out to the site and they're dealing with high potential risks, work at height, PVPI, health risks, all of those things, they'll be much more switched on, much more focused, much more present, have much more skin in the game, as it were, in terms of how we go to work. So they'll feel like an enabled and connected workforce at whatever level and whatever role you do. Other factors is we're doing a lot of work around inclusion and diversity. And again, going back to my Langer Hawk days where we talked a lot about, rethinking safety through inclusion and wellbeing, we're kind of following on that similar thread, which I think has really good kind of credibility running through it. Where if we make people feel included, we make people feel like they're cared for, then you're going to get better outcomes. Linking quickly back to, I suppose, a safety 2 model or a safety differently model. Tangential as that might sound, me just saying that, but if you think about the ethos of people being involved in how they go to work, people being asked about, how would they do things better, when is work difficult? So rather than looking at health and safety in the workplace as being a rule-based, are you following your RAMs or aren't you? A kind of almost a transactional relationship to health and safety in the workplace. Another thing we're bringing in is obviously, yes, they might have all that welfare and all that care external to the project, but when we're in the project, it's about how we care for people when they're at work. So that would be in all sorts of areas which we can explore. But one of them for me is all of the tools we use now, which are even everything from a leadership engagement tool, which is where leaders ask curious questions about how can we do things better. What would you do if you had one wish? What would you do differently? When are we letting you down? Humility in leaders, curiosity in leaders that don't necessarily need to know all the answers, but just know how to ask better questions. And then the big one for me I'll finish on is I could go on all day, but it's genuinely involving the workforce, people, in how we go to work. I used to be one of those people, an engineer who wrote thick RAMs, who interpreted the design and the spec, wrote a big thick document, having been out of university for 5 years, and then go and preach to 10 people with 25 years experience each how they were going to build a wall. A story I've used a lot in training sessions, I suppose, is, and this is a true story, when my lead chippy joiner, when he retired, I was still there at T5, we're at his leaving do, and we were having a great time, and we did the bit, where you give them the presents you've bought them, and his wife was there as well, and it was a really good event. In his summing up, he said, speech, and he didn't like talking, but he said at the end, he said, I'd like to thank you all for being my colleagues, for being my friends. I'd like to thank the business for being there for me, for employing me, for bringing me to an amazing project like this. He said, and all these years you've paid me for my skills and for my trade and for my hands, but you could have had my mind for free. Yeah, lovely. And that's always stuck with me. That we were at a time there where we never engaged with people and said, how would you do this? How have you done this before? And so that's what we've introduced, and what, to be honest, it's been one of my golden threads since the noughties, that we should never ever put a plan in place unless the people who are doing the work have had a chance to feed. Funny that, and how simple is that? And then how do they feel? Then they feel, well, this is my plan. I've written this. Yeah. And are they going to comply with the plan they've written themselves? Of course they are. Of course they are. So compliance goes up. Yeah. Everyone's happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not rocket science, Keith, and I find, and again, maybe rightly or wrongly, I am sometimes baffled when I talk to clients around, have you consulted with your workforce on this? Even before starting to work with, construction, health and wellbeing, and working at Skanska and working prior to that at Vitality, and prior to that in recruitment. I mean, the questions I ask in recruitment are exactly the same questions I ask in occupational health or workplace health and wellbeing, and it really is around who knows more than I do about this, and it makes sense to literally go and ask. And And coming back to my initial point, I think I made earlier in the show that it doesn't cost nothing. I'll just share this with you. It's a little bit boring, but it's sort of showing that the I suppose highlighting what you said. And I'm sure they won't mind me saying this, but when I got to work at Skanska, so I was there in the occupational health and wellbeing lead and chair of the mental health and wellbeing network. I was going in similar to you, fresh, from doing my masters and all this sort of stuff, and it's kind of like stress risk assessment, this, and I think they'd done a paltry amount. Let's put it this way: they may have done them, but they weren't uploaded. So I started to roll some upskill out, and we got to a position where one of the health and wellbeing specialists, or occupational health hygienists, we called them health and wellbeing specialists, really got on board with this and started pushing it across one of the sectors. And within that time, we got up to 325 stress risk assessments. And her and the head of health and safety and wellbeing went up to a project in Scotland for 3 days. And basically went and did what I call task and finish teams. So we analysed the results. We pushed out the survey. It was a simple HSE, 35 questions, got the results back, saw where the risks were high, asked those people who were affected or exposed by those hazards to join a meeting with the health and safety and wellbeing team. And they had 6 meetings over 3 days, so 2 days, 2 meetings per day, and started to put in the interventions. They simply asked them, what do we need to do? This is tell us what the issues are. Line manager wasn't there. It was the health, safety and wellbeing team. And they started to put in some interventions that affected 79 people, and it cost 0. Yeah. It didn't cost any more money. Now, fortunately, I wasn't around long enough for the 6 months. The idea was that we then carried out more stress risk assessments 6 months down the line. But it's just an example that I use to sort of demonstrate it's not hard. A lot of it is fear. But what are your team what is your workforce going to tell you that realistically you don't already know? And even if you don't know, I'd still rather know and try and do something about it than just let it fester. And then, in terms of where you're located, the attraction of staff and all that stuff that comes with it.
But I think, obviously, without repeating, I think just that simple act of involving them in the plan has all those additional benefits as well, doesn't it? That first of all, their mental health is going to be better because they feel listened to. Yeah. If they've got any frustrations, they get to talk about them in front of their colleagues. They might feel another degree of respect because they were listened to and their point was made. When they're back in their, they might have an innovative idea. That I won't go into it, but some of the best ideas we came up with on some of the projects I've been on was literally, we had this story. We've already got one where we brought in some expert to try and create a new tool, and someone walked around the corner and said, "What, one like this?" And so the workforce had already, they would think about this. I even hate, to be honest, sorry, I'm using the word workforce because again, I think sometimes it can be used derogatory. They're just people like my dad and my brother who also works in construction, who were just there to do a job, and they do just as good and important as a job as I do or my project director does. They're just all on different positions in the pitch. I might be the goalkeeper, and they're up front, and we're all just here to deliver the project together. And that, I suppose, going back to the initial question, it's exactly what we're trying to create at Sizewell C. Everyone's in the bridge. Everyone's got a voice. Everyone can stop the ship or make it go faster. It's up to them. Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good. It's heartening. It's heartening to hear that that's going on. And I do see pockets in the industry, and from downright disrespect to actually, you kind of see there's that. But on the flip side of that, though, Keith, and this is something I'm finding I'm talking about more often than not. And again, you've kind of alluded to it there, and I'm glad you did about 5 minutes ago with regards to leadership. And I find myself repeating this point more and more. Is of course you need to consult with the workforce, and you want to look at the people, and we want to look at their health, well-being, and whatnot. But it's not just for them. It's for the leaders. And in fact, I was having a meeting with a potential client today, and it was, we centralized it around the self-awareness of our people and and the effect that they can have. So when it's looking at implementing, dare I say it, something like a risk assessment or ISO 45003, we're doing this for the leaders as well as the rest of, and when we say leaders, we talk about senior leadership team and as high up as you can get, because realistically there's an element of they need to be looking at this more than themselves, and I've tried this, as I said, in other organizations where I've tried to push the senior leadership teams just to take an inward look at themselves. This isn't resilience or mentoring or coaching. It's right. What's work doing to you as an individual and your family and society, and what are you responsible for? What does your organization do, and how much are you accountable for what's going to happen in society as well? And lots of barriers went up, as you can imagine, when you start talking about that. But I think we need to look at that as well, as that when we look to implement a wellbeing initiative, or we're looking at mitigating psychosocial risk, we're certainly looking at it from the whole organization and everyone that's in that organization. We're not othering the senior leadership because they're senior leadership. It's no, actually, we probably need to be looking at you separately, because this is going to cascade down. So it's interesting where we are.
Yeah. I mean, a whole load of work we did at Langerock, and to be honest, we're just copying it. Langerock are a partner, obviously, of Sizewell C, so it's why we're not just stealing all this stuff; we're doing it together. But yeah, it's the fact that leaders are in a transition. It depends where you are on that transition. We've gone from I don't know, was it called a Talbotist model? A hierarchical. Do what you're paid for, not what you think kind of model. It's that kind of where leaders were supposed to be in control. Leaders are supposed to know everything. The buck stops with the leader. It's very top down messaging and all of those things. And we've now really we start to talk about inverted triangles and inclusive, vulnerable, and humble leadership models. And to take a leader who's been doing this all their career a certain way, and then start to say, well, sorry, you need to be more vulnerable, you need to be more humble, you're not expected to know everything, you just have to ask better questions, the phrase I used before. That's changed, that's different. Whereas at the same time, they're still expected to deliver the project on time to a certain margin, etc. So you're asking people to lose the tools that have made them successful and got them to the position where they are in their career. You're asking them to change. Change that. And that's difficult for some people. I mean,
it is.
I'm always of the view in a spectrum, bell curve, whatever you want to call it. You'll always have some early adopters who've probably already thought that way, but weren't allowed to. I've got to learn how to be a bit more red. Whereas you'll have the ones who find it harder. And I just think you have to help leaders through that. But the fundamental really is that unless you have leaders who can create the right environments for success. And I'm going to say, obviously, that's the definition I've been talking through, which is looking at work through the lens of well-being, through the lens of people, engagement, inclusion, all of those things. Unless you're a leader who respects that is the way forward, or that is the answer to my dreams, then you're not going to get people who really invest in it and create those environments in the first place.
No. And I do think, coming back to a bell curve, and I do think that eventually will be phased out of work as we start to look at our younger generations, Generation Z at the moment, and as they move into mid-management and dare I say it, senior management, and I think it will change quicker than it ever has done. We've started to see that obviously through the post-pandemic, where 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I guess now, it was all mental health first aiders, and now we're coming through the back end of that as to, well, actually, how do they help the organisation, and organisations are now looking at being a bit more strategic around what work is doing to our individuals.
And you're right. Really, what I've just said is, unless you change your model, then the people are going to leave, not come or leave you, because people today they insist upon inclusion. They insist upon having a voice.
Of course,
they insist upon likes and feedback. So if you're not doing that as an organisation or a leader, then good luck.
Yeah. You may have answered the next question, which is the magic one question, as I call it, with regards to if you could, change one thing, or what single shift in mindset would make a difference, do you think, to the, I'm going to use that word, the workforce health in construction? Is it that? Is it the mentality more than anything else, or do you feel we need to look at other areas?
I mean, it's almost an area we haven't touched on in so far in this, but it is linked to exactly what we just said, really, which is, this whole concept of, we've focused a lot on safety, and I'm not saying that we've nailed safety. There's still high risk out there, but and we still work in a high risk environment, and the more we can design out that risk, the better. But we haven't really started our journey yet when it comes to occupational health risk. We haven't really started addressing mental health risk in the way that we need to at the moment. One thing I've gained. I've been quoted to say is, I'm a bit sick of mental health awareness campaigns. I'm a bit sick of talking about
I'm with you.
awareness. Great. When are we going to fix the fundamentals that feed those issues, which are shift patterns, which are work security, job security? Why is the majority of the workforce in the UK still on weekly paid or self-employed, where they can be considered weekend warriors or disposed of, with 24 hours notice? Again, it was a concept we explored at Langeroort when I was there, but, why isn't everyone on the same payroll with the same conditions?
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to arc back to, the models of the early 20th century, but when you had, Cadbury models where people felt they were part of the organisation, where people had pensions and houses that were built for them, where people were looked after and they had social clubs and Christmas parties and all those things. If we get anywhere near something like that, where we're just treating people with respect, giving people, support services, etc., there may be other things like even the burden on the NHS. I don't think anyone's really quantified just how much a burden the construction is on the NHS in terms of occupational health issues, silica, lung disease, skin cancer, hearing loss, musculoskeletal diseases, all of those things, dermatitis, all of the things that we do to people on construction sites, which I'm going to say, controversially, we've not even started at yet. We talk about occupational health, and then we think, well, how much does that include? But why do we talk about lifting, PVPI, work at height? We break safety down, don't we, into its constituent parts? Why don't we talk about health in its constituent parts and how important each one of them are? The thousands of people who are dying from lung cancer every year. And, we hide behind the excuse, well, it probably didn't happen when he was employed with us. Probably happened somewhere else, as when he was working for the council or something, or for Balfour Beatty or something, I don't know. But, I think we just have to face up to this issue and solve it. And that is, those different parts. And that would be my magic wand. Can we please start to do health way better than we ever did safety?
Yeah, so you should come and work for construction, health and wellbeing, Keith. So to your point on that though, so who is it, if there is, whose responsibility is it to fix? Are we looking at the industry? Are we looking at government? When we look at social value and whether or not that's having an effect on society, the business model you have when I was working for Vitality was very much along the lines of, funny enough, if you have healthy employees, and your responsibility is to keep your employees healthy, you're going to have, a better workforce, or, more productive, and they're going to be healthier. So therefore it's going to be less of a strain and less of a burden on social services, such as the NHS. We eat more than we ever did. When we eat more rubbish than we ever did. We move less than we have ever done with technology. You look at society and this, you're kind of like, well, who? So are we asking organisations to fix societal problems, or do the organisations need government to help them? You mentioned occupational health. There was some noise about tax breaks and tax incentives for organisations if they refer people to occupational health a lot earlier, etc. And that when the Labour government came in, that sort of went away. But the question, as I say, the bottom line is, who does this? That's the thing. Who takes that accountability to say, right, we're 20-year plan. We've got to plant our oak tree now and then see where we are in 20 years. You're
touching on one of the issues, which is who is the leader? Is it the regulator? Is it the government? Do we need more legislation? I think my answer to that would be no. I don't think we do. The HSE can only do so much. I think this just has to come down to really, yes, the regs already say what employers need to do and what they don't need to do.
Exactly.
But even on Sizewell C right now, as with Tideway, Crossrail, HS2, Hinckley, whenever you ask questions like, has everyone got a safety critical medical? Is everyone undergoing health surveillance? Has everyone got a fit for work certificate? All of those things. People will still look at you blank and not understanding what that even means.
Yeah.
Have you got an employee assistance program? People will still look at you blank. So right. I think there are things that we just need to, however we mandate it or enforce it or introduce it, we just need to make sure that people are first and foremost doing those basics, as I'd call them. That people are getting medicals and support. People are getting health surveillance. And we're not going to solve the health issue by, and I can hear some of my colleagues shouting at me right now, you're not going to solve it by having those services, but they're a good step forward. What we also need to do is get really grumpy about health by design and cease accepting the standards that we accept. I mean, that's quite a strong message, which is, we accept these things. You talked earlier about the guys on the plank having their lunch and how safety is totally different.
Yeah.
What's our version of that? Things I'd like to do is not necessarily ban. I'm not a big banner or mandator really as a person or as a practitioner, but there should be things that are just unacceptable these days, and that could be chasing
non-negotiables.
That could be chasing concrete. We just don't do that anymore. That could be scabballing. We just don't do that anymore. It's just not something we do. It's been phased out of the industry, and there's lots of engineering controls we can put in place, lots of designs we can do differently. The solutions are there. So I think we just need to move the dial on what we design, what we specify, products, processes, materials that just shouldn't be part of the industry anymore. We then need to make sure that, a quest I'm on is that all, health and safety practitioners are health and safety practitioners, because it's still a big S and a little H in the majority of the industry. Yeah. So people who understand risk, managers, leaders, black hats, blue hats, whatever you want to call them, all who have a real maturity around health and risk management. So they understand when they're putting people to work what they need. They even know what LEV stands for when it comes to welding or whether it comes to dust extraction. Yeah. So it's really creating a competence within the industry, the design community, and then, yes, of course, everyone having those services available just to check that our risk control measures are working. And if our health surveillance always comes back green, fantastic, we're doing a good job. But keep that plan do, check out loop going so that we continually improve. Sure.
Keith, you and I could probably pontificate about this for another hour, but I don't know who would want to hear it, but there you go. I normally end. I'm going to be a bit cheeky here, if this is okay.
Go for it.
I think you'll forgive me for this. I normally ask at the end if there's anything I should have covered that you'd want to talk about, but I'm actually going to take that question, I'm afraid, and I'm going to, if that's okay, talk about something I think we should have been talking about, and there's been current undertones there. So, you're a football fan?
I am.
There you go. Are you a United fan? A Man United fan?
Yeah. For my sins. I was brought up, as you probably sensed at the start, nearly being called Dennis, but then being brainwashed for most of my infant life about the stories of George Best, Dennis Law, and Bobby Charlton.
Yeah. So how are you feeling these days around your football team? Or your football club, shall we say?
I'm enjoying what we're doing at the moment. I'm enjoying the resurgence at the end of the season. It's always nice to win games and to see some form of progression. There's obviously the insecurity of what happens at the end of the season with Michael, or whether we move on to somebody new. My hero was Steve Coppell when I was a kid. I was a right winger.
Oh, nice.
And he was the poster on my wall. So I remember United when we were, scrambling for an FA Cup and Ron Atkinson managing us and all those. That time pre the
83, was it?
Pre the dominance. 83, 80s, all the way through with Brian Robson.
I think he won the FA Cup in '83 and the Milk Cup or something like that. Anyway, I don't know why I remember that.
Norman Whiteside's favourite famous goal.
That was the goal. I do remember.
That was where my roots are. And then obviously the Alex Ferguson phase was great. How awesome was that? And any fan would look at that and the football we played. Cantona, seeing him play live at Old Trafford, fantastic. And David Beckham and all the rest of it. It was a great story. And look, every club goes through cycles. Liverpool went 30 years without a Premiership. After their dominance in the 70s, and
they did in the 70s. Yeah.
So whenever it happens, I'm sure Man United will have a cycle through again, and we'll have our time again. But yeah, I enjoy football, and I enjoy watching the European games as well. So I was supporting Liverpool and Villa the other night when they were playing. And I'm British at heart, but I'm a Man United as well. So it wasn't easy to support Liverpool, but I'm still happy to do so against a foreign counterpart.
Yeah, well, we're recording this sort of mid-March, so it was quarter-final stage. I think they've got to now, isn't it? I've met Steve Coppell once. Yeah, I was.
Is he shorter than you think he was?
No, he's short. I can't. This would have been, I think, 1999. I think.
Was he?
I want to call it Zizi's. I'm not sure, but it was a restaurant in Chiswick. Okay. And funny enough, I'd just come back. I have to get this out. I'm a Millwall fan, and we played in the Auto Windscreen Shield final against Wigan, and we lost 1-0. And my dad came with me, who's a Charlton fan, but he still came with me. And we went out for a meal because we lived in Chiswick. And funny enough, Steve Coppell was there, and I went up and I said hello and just said, for England more than anything else, thanks for what you did and whatnot. But he's still around, isn't he? He's alive, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He was the Palace manager for a while. I don't know if he's managing still.
He was,
but
no, I don't think. But his name came up about a couple of months ago, and I did Wikipedia him. I can't remember what he's up to these days. Anyway, listen, Friday afternoon, as I mentioned at the top of the show, really appreciate taking your time to talk to me. I really enjoyed that. I hope you did. So thank you for that. We'll wrap it up there, and we will.
We should call this webinar. Better chickens give you more eggs, or whatever your phrase was.
Happier chickens lay more eggs. Yeah. Well, thanks to those who have taken the time to listen and watch. Feel free to leave any comments, or even if you want to be on the podcast, then do let me know.